Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The Pentagon is holding a secret meeting. Secretary of War Pate Hegseth has summoned hundreds of US generals and admirals to Virginia. What's the agenda? No one knows. Not even President Trump seems aware of it. His vice president had to step in to answer questions. Typically, senior generals visit Washington twice a year, but this time even officers from combat zones have been called back. So what is this meeting about? Is it a new defense strategy, a political reset, or something else entirely? The headlines are calling it the military's version of Squid Games. Meanwhile, Trump is expanding his trade war. He has now announced a 100% tariff on pharma. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaks at the United Nations amid a boycott by dozens of delegates. Also in focus, what did Trump, Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir discuss behind closed doors? Why is Yunus blaming India for the chaos in Bangladesh? And do rats in New York have their own secret language? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Iran and Russia sign a $25 billion deal to build nuclear power plants in the Islamic Republic. This comes just ahead of the likely return of UN sanctions on Tehran. Western countries have long accused Iran of seeking an atomic bomb, but it's a charge that Tehran has vehemently denied. Gold gains and silver retreats in future trade. A day after silver prices surged to an all-time high, the record-breaking rally of the white metal was propelled by its dual identity. Silver is seen as both a safe haven asset and a critical industrial commodity. Donald Trump calls former FBI Director James Comey a dirty cop. The US president also cheered Comey's indictment after he was charged with making false statements and obstruction of justice. The case relates to the probe into whether Russia meddled in the 2016 election, which Trump had won. Madagascar's capital deserted after violent protests which killed at least 5 people. The unrest was over frequent power cuts and water shortages. The protests were led by hundreds of young demonstrators. Police had to use rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse the crowd. And the UK plans to launch a nationwide digital ID scheme. The aim is to curb illegal migration. The digital ID will be held on people's phones. It will be mandatory to be able to work in the UK. The opposition parties have dismissed it as a gimmick. It's unprecedented, it's top secret, and it is highly controversial. A move that has shaken up the American military, and at the center of it is a mysterious summon. It came from Pentagon Chief Pate Hegseth this week. The Pentagon, as you would know, is the US Defense Ministry, and Pate Hegseth is the Defense Minister. He has summoned hundreds of senior US military officers to Virginia, specifically to a Marine Corps base. We're talking about scores of generals and admirals, people who command hundreds of soldiers. All of them will pack into an auditorium next Tuesday. Why? Well, that is the strange part. No one knows. Pate Hegseth has not given a reason for this summon. Even Pentagon officials are tight-lipped. They did confirm next week's meeting, but on the agenda, they said nothing. Even President Donald Trump appeared blindsided. Yesterday, he was asked about this gathering, and Trump did not have a clue. He thought it was a gathering of foreign generals in Virginia. So his deputy, Vice President J.D. Vance, had to step in.
Secretary Hegseth is inviting military leaders from all around the country on Tuesday. Will you also be there?
From all around the country to what?
To Virginia. He's inviting the generals and admirals to Virginia for a big meeting.
Well, I know. I love it. I mean, I think it's great. Let him be friendly. Let him be friendly with the generals and admirals from all over the world. Why is there something? No, but is there something wrong with it?
What is it about? Will you be there personally as well? And what is it about?
Well, I'll be there if they want me, but why is that such a big deal? I mean, the fact that we're getting along with the generals and admirals from all. Remember, I'm the president of peace. It's good to get along. It's good. You act like this is a bad thing. Isn't it nice that people are coming from all over the world to be with us?
It's not particularly unusual that generals who report to the Secretary of War and then to the President of the United States are coming to speak with the Secretary of War. It's actually not unusual at all, and I think it's odd that you guys have made it into such a big story.
Let's talk some numbers first. The US military has 800 officers at the level of general. 800. 44 of them are 4-star generals, meaning the senior-most military officers of the United States of America, and many of them serve abroad. They are in charge of US military commands overseas, like in Africa, in the Indo-Pacific, in West Asia. Which makes you wonder, what's cooking? What is the Pentagon up to? We look at the possible explanations, but first let's look at the build-up. Pate Hegseth is not a typical Pentagon chief. He is a former television host with a sketchy past. He's been accused of sexual assault. He's had trouble with alcoholism, and he's never held a public office before. So why did Donald Trump pick him? Well, for his absolute loyalty. After taking charge, Pate Hegseth has tried to reshape the US military. In the month of May, he ordered a downsizing, a 20% cut in 4-star generals, and a 10% cut in other generals. He has also fired dozens of senior officers. Many of them were people of color and women. Pate Hegseth fired them. He says the US military was becoming too woke. So his solution? To restore a so-called warrior ethos.
And from day one, and each 100 of those days, our overriding objectives have been clear. Restoring the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing deterrence. Restoring the warrior ethos is the most fundamental of those three. Everything starts and ends with warriors in training and on the battlefield. We are leaving wokeness and weakness behind and refocusing on lethality, meritocracy, accountability, standards, and readiness.
That's Pate Hegseth in a nutshell. He's unpredictable and temperamental, which is why the US military leadership is worried. Reports say the top rank is anxious and concerned by his summons. Now we come to the possibilities. One is strategic. Perhaps the Pentagon wants to brief its generals, maybe unveil a new top-secret strategy. And there's context here. The US is reportedly publishing a new defense strategy. In recent years, it has focused on China, meaning countering Beijing was the top security challenge for America. But reports say that will be updated. The new top priority will be the homeland, meaning internal American security. Things like securing the border, drugs and immigration. That's what they should focus on. And if that is the case, it could be discussed at the meeting. The second possibility is that this meeting could be political, maybe a briefing on the new warrior ethos, maybe a guidance on how to crack down on woke ideas, or maybe a full rebrand exercise. Again, there's context here. Trump recently renamed the US Defense Department. It is now the Department of War. So with this US administration, you never really know. And with Pate Hegseth, even more so. Not only does he have an unpredictable streak, he's also known to go rogue. Let's go back to the first weeks of Trump's second term. Out of nowhere, cargo planes carrying weapons for Ukraine were grounded, 11 of them in Doha and Delaware. Nobody knew what had happened. The order did not come from the White House. It did not come from the American generals. It did not even come from the vice president. So Washington was confused. As it turned out, Pate Hegseth was the one who gave that order. That too without Trump's knowledge. Is this meeting also one such rogue move? I'm afraid we can't be sure, but it does carry several strategic implications. As you know, the US is the most powerful military in the world. It is deployed in hotspots across the globe, in West Asia, in the South China Sea, and in Eastern Europe. Their presence is a vital deterrence against military aggression. For example, against Chinese designs on Taiwan. Yet, Pate Hegseth is summoning generals away from their post. Also, it sounds like an intelligence nightmare. Just imagine the scenes on Tuesday. Hundreds of top generals huddling under the same roof. It's a big logistical and security challenge. Let's see if the meeting's agenda lives up to the hype. Donald Trump has struck again. His trade war has a new target: pharmaceuticals. That is the target. Starting October, drug imports will face a 100% tariff in the US. Just like his earlier moves, this too hits India. The US is India's biggest pharma market, but most of the exports are generic drugs. The new tariff does not apply to generics, but there's a catch.
शायद कल जो एक नोटिस आया था सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट पे हम लोगों ने देखा है कि नए टैरिफ की बात हो रही है फार्मा पे और भी अन्य कुछ पदार्थ पे, तो इस रिपोर्ट को हम लोगों ने देखा है और हमारे यहाँ जो मंत्रालय जो विभाग इससे संबंधित है वो इस मामले पे नज़र रखे हैं और उसको उस पर देख रहे हैं कि क्या उस पर असर पड़ता है। विशेष जानकारी के लिए तो मैं कहूँगा कि जो संबंधित मंत्रालय हैं यहाँ पर उनसे बातचीत करेंगे तो
So let's break it down for you. First, what exactly is this tariff on? Trump is targeting branded and patented drugs. As always, he made the announcement on Truth Social. Trump said, and I'm quoting, any branded or patented pharmaceutical product will now face a 100% tariff. There is one exception though. It's for companies that make in America. If you have a plant in the US, if you have broken ground, or if your factory is under construction in the United States, then you can be exempted from this 100% tariff. Also exempted are generic medicines. And the reason is quite simple. A tariff on generics would be counterproductive. They are consumed in large quantities. In fact, India makes up 31% of America's supply of medicines. Last year, this export was worth over $8 billion. And generics are essential for any healthcare system, including the American one. These are the most commonly used drugs, and they help in saving money. In 2022, generics saved the US economy some $219 billion. So you could say that India can help America keep its healthcare affordable, which is why generics are exempt from the latest tariffs. But they're still being targeted with a different tool. Washington has ordered an investigation. The scope of this probe is very broad, and the question it is trying to address is this: do pharma imports pose a threat to US national security? That's what they will investigate. Do pharma imports pose a threat to US national security? The review covers finished drugs. It also covers active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs as they're called, and other medical materials. The US Department of Commerce is leading this probe. The report will be ready by December. The recommendations will be submitted to the US President, and President Trump could take action by March 2026. Now, for Indian suppliers, this probe poses a risk, which is why markets reacted sharply to this announcement. Major Asian markets were trading in the red today, from South Korea's Kospi to Hong Kong's Hang Seng, Japan's Nikkei 225 and India's Nifty 50. They were all in the red. And this was predominantly due to the losses suffered by the pharma companies. The trades were mostly sentiment driven because while generics are safe right now, investors are not sure about the future. So where does this leave Indian companies, the ones that supply drugs to the US market? For now, the direct impact is limited. Only a few Indian players sell branded drugs in the US, but Trump is sending a deeper message, the same one that he has sent through other tariffs. He wants you to make in America. He wants you to invest in America, build more factories, more manufacturing facilities. And global pharma giants have already started doing this. They are building new plants. They're expanding their base in the US, and that poses a long-term challenge for India. The success of Indian pharma was built on two factors: low cost and scale. Indian companies produce good quality drugs at scale, and they do it at reasonable prices. But this model is now under threat. To keep their market share in the United States, they may have to build factories in the US, and that means higher costs and thinner margins. Big companies may survive this, but smaller firms could struggle. So what is the way out? Well, a trade deal could help. India and the US are talking again. If they strike an agreement, if pharma is included in the pact, then these tariffs could be capped. But with Trump, there is no guarantee. Remember, this is not an isolated move. The pressure is coming from many sides. In addition to the 50% tariffs on Indian exports, Trump has revoked the sanctions waiver for Chabahar port. He has imposed a $100,000 fee on the H-1B visa, and now the pharma sector is under attack. Trump is clearly turning up the heat. Yes, India will feel the impact, but so will the US. Because these latest tariffs target medicines. Many of them are life-saving drugs, so the real cost may not be borne by Indian companies alone. American patients could end up paying the biggest price for their president's reckless moves.
TikTok, it's run by American investors. TikTok.
It is finally official. After months of back and forth, negotiations, executive orders and threats of a ban, and the occasional Trump tweet, TikTok has been pulled firmly into America's orbit. Donald Trump has signed off on a deal. It will shift TikTok's US operations into American hands. Right now, TikTok is owned by Chinese giant ByteDance. Under the new deal, ByteDance will surrender its US arm. TikTok US will spin off as a separate company. It is valued at around $14 billion, the new US company. And it will be placed under the control of American investors. That's the deal right now.
So this is interesting because I had a very good talk with President Xi, a lot of respect for him. Hopefully he has a lot of respect for me too. And we talked about TikTok and other things, but we talked about TikTok, and he gave us the go-ahead. It's run by American investors and American companies, great ones, great investors, the biggest. You don't get bigger, I don't imagine.
So who will own TikTok US? The ownership map looks like a who's who of America's business elite. There's also a sprinkling of Gulf royalty. Leading the charge are Oracle and Larry Ellison. The US tech giant will play gatekeeper on data security. Private equity group Silver Lake also has a stake, so does MGX. It is an Abu Dhabi fund chaired by Zayed Al Nahyan. He is the brother of UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed, MBZ. Now, MGX will have a 15% stake and a board seat. Together, they will have around 45% control. Other names doing the round are Michael Dell and Rupert Murdoch. Together, American investors will control over 65% of TikTok.
It's very good and very meaningful, but we have American investors taking it over, running it, highly sophisticated, including Larry Ellison. And Oracle, I guess, is going to play a very big role in terms of security, safety, and everything else. So we have very good controls. And
what about the rest? Well, there's very little clarity about it, but here's what we know. 19.9% of the stake will remain with ByteDance, the Chinese parent company. So China will control around 20% of the app, but the TikTok deal is less about logistics and more about control. For decades, the US exported social media the way it exports Coca-Cola. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, they were all born in California. They expanded to the farthest corners of the world. Then along came TikTok, a Chinese import. an app that Americans downloaded in the millions. As of today, 170 million Americans are on TikTok. That's around half of the US population, 170 million. 63% US teens use this app. So for Washington, it was a breach, a foreign entity holding the eyeballs of the country. The other thing they were concerned about was data. TikTok gathers vast amounts of data, like all social media platforms do. This includes your location, your browsing habits, and even your contacts. Now, under Chinese law, ByteDance could be compelled to share that data with Beijing. So the algorithm can be weaponized. Of course, TikTok insists that none of this has happened, but the US is not convinced. So Washington made its stance clear. ByteDance had to sell TikTok's US operations or face a nationwide ban. And what does China make of it? Trump claims he got Xi Jinping's blessing. Beijing has not said much publicly, but don't mistake silence for surrender. China has every reason to be wary. This is a homegrown tech giant being chopped up under US pressure. Approving the deal means swallowing that humiliation. Rejecting the deal means risking a ban on TikTok in its largest market outside China. For now, Beijing seems to be holding its tongue. After all, the app's survival is better than destruction, but the problem is the precedent that it sets. For decades, the pattern was quite clear. If you were on social media anywhere, odds were that it was an American platform. TikTok broke that spell. Suddenly, the hottest app in the US was not American. It was Chinese. That shook Washington's sense of control. So this deal restores the old status quo. But if the US can muscle a Chinese giant into selling, what stops it from doing the same with future challengers? So I guess the bigger message for all of us is this: the world can use American apps, but the United States will not tolerate someone else's app dominating its market. Benjamin Netanyahu is no stranger to the United Nations General Assembly podium. After all, he's the longest-serving Israeli Prime Minister. He has given this speech multiple times, but this year was different. The war in Gaza has dragged on for nearly 2 years. The death toll has soared past 65,000. Israel's allies have begun to peel away. Some are even recognizing Palestine. In this backdrop, Benjamin Netanyahu arrived for his UNGA speech today, but before he could even start, dozens of delegates walked out. Some even booed as they left.
Please order in the hall. Please order in the hall. Please order in the hall. Please order in the hall.
So they walked out, but when has that ever stopped Netanyahu? He came with his usual defiance. He came armed with a map and a new prop this time, a QR code. The Israeli Prime Minister sported a QR code on his suit. It contains Israel's account of the Gaza war. The QR stunt was meant to funnel the world's attention back to October 7th. October 7, 2023, that's when Hamas attacked Israel. He framed it as Israel's eternal justification for Gaza's destruction. But not everyone was convinced, especially the half-empty hall.
But we're not done yet. The final elements, the final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible.
The main thread of the speech was defiance. Defiance against critics, against world opinion, and against the tide of diplomatic recognition for Palestine. According to him, Israel's intelligence services are quietly saving Western capitals from terror plots. Even as those same governments scold him at the UN.
You know what message the leaders who recognize the Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off.
For Israelis, Netanyahu had little comfort. He did mention the hostages. 20 of them are still left in Gaza. Their families have accused Netanyahu of prolonging the war instead of negotiating their release. Hamas insists it is not blocking a deal. Yet Netanyahu doubled down. He says no ceasefire, no compromise. Instead, he spoke directly to the hostages. He promised to bring them back home.
Our brave heroes. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter and we will not rest until we bring all of you home.
Obviously, no Netanyahu speech is complete without Iran. This time, he hailed a recent 12-day war against Tehran. He praised Donald Trump. He credited the Israeli military, and of course, he had a map to highlight Iran's axis of terror.
Israel's 12-day war with Iran, which I renamed Operation Rising Lion, that's from the Bible. This 12-day war will go down in the annals of military history. Our daring pilots neutralized Iran's missile defenses and took control of the skies over Tehran. And you saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action.
The speech went on for about 45 minutes. It ended on the same defiant note. Clearly, Netanyahu is not backing down. What does that mean for Gaza? Well, there are talks of a post-war plan, and one name is being floated. Tony Blair. Yes, the former Prime Minister of the UK, Tony Blair, the man who marched Britain into Iraq, and then with then US President George W. Bush. Now, the same Tony Blair is angling for another shot at history. According to reports, Blair is positioning himself to oversee Gaza. How will he do that? Through a post-war transitional authority. It would be backed by the Trump administration. The idea is quite simple. Gaza would be run by a Palestinian committee. It would be supervised by an international board, possibly chaired by Tony Blair himself. It would be a kind of trusteeship, a temporary arrangement until something more permanent could emerge. The plan, of course, is controversial. Arab states worry that it would sideline Palestinians. Gazans are unlikely to welcome a foreign caretaker, and Netanyahu, well, he has repeatedly rejected any role for the Palestinian Authority. So a Blair-led trusteeship is a far stretch. Yet Tony Blair has been lobbying. He's attended White House meetings. He's spoken with Arab leaders and floated his vision of Gaza under international supervision. You could say this is an attempt at comeback. Whether it's Netanyahu at the UNGA with his maps and QR codes or Tony Blair floating himself as Gaza's trustee, the trend is quite clear. The war may have stretched for almost 2 years, but the battle over what comes next is only just beginning. And if history is any guide, the struggle to control Gaza's future may prove just as fierce as the war that destroyed its present. Today in Chandigarh, a chapter in India's military history closed with a roar. The MiG-21, India's first supersonic fighter jet, has flown into retirement after 6 decades of service. The Soviet jet was first introduced in 1963. It was inducted into the Indian Air Force in 1963. By the 1980s, it was not just a jet, it was the workhorse of the Indian Air Force. It was deployed in multiple wars. Very few aircraft have carried a legacy so long. But with this glory also came tragedy. By the 2000s, the MiG-21 earned a grim nickname, the Flying Coffin. That's what it was called, the Flying Coffin. Hundreds of crashes, countless lives lost, and yet for generations of pilots, flying the MiG was a rite of passage. Today, at the very base where it was first inducted, the jet bowed out in style. Our next report takes a look.
It was a retirement party in Chandigarh. For one last time, the Indian Air Force's MiG-21 jets streaked through the sky. A plane that has defended India for over 6 decades. Through conflicts and controversies, the MiG-21 kept flying. But today was its last day in office. A well-deserved retirement for the workhorse of India's air fleet. India's MiG story began in the early 1960s. That's when these needle-nosed fighter jets arrived in India from the Soviet Union. It was India's first supersonic jet. In the years that followed, the Air Force purchased 872 MiG-21s. At one point, they made up 2/3 of India's fleet. The MiGs fought in India's 20th Century War. In 1971, they played a pivotal role. Indian pilots, in MiG-21s, launched air raids over the erstwhile East Pakistan. One of them hit the governor's house in Dhaka, and on the same day, Pakistan agreed to surrender. But as the years went by, the MiG-21 garnered a different reputation, that of a flying coffin. Around 480 crashes have been recorded since 1971. Put together, they claimed the lives of 171 pilots and 39 civilians. Yet, India never retired the MiG-21. Amid a shortage of planes, it just wasn't an option. Despite the technology gap, the MiG continued to serve India. In 2019, during the Balakot strikes, came its crowning moment. The latest version of the MiG-21, the Bison, shot down a US-made F-16 fighter jet. In the right hands, it was still lethal. Even during the recent Operation Sindoor, the MiGs took to the skies. It would be its last taste of combat. Back to Chandigarh now. A sunny, cloudless day awaited the MiG-21. Down below was India's military brass, including the Defence Minister, the Air Force Chief, and a number of his predecessors. The Air Chief himself flew a sortie in the MiG-21. The pilots flew in 3-plane and 4-plane formations. They also conducted a majestic flypast. As they returned to the ground, the MiG-21s received a water cannon salute. Thus ended an illustrious chapter in India's Air Force history.
साथियों, कोई भी ऐतिहासिक मिशन हो, हर बार MiG-21 ने तिरंगे का सम्मान बढ़ाया है। इसलिए यह फेयरवेल हमारी कलेक्टिव मेमोरीज का भी है और हमारे नेशनल प्राइड का भी है और इस जर्नी का भी है जिसमें करेज, सैक्रिफाइस और एक्सेलेंस की कहानी लिखी गई है।
As we bid adieu to the MiG-21, there are questions too. The final 2 squadrons have retired from service. That puts India's squadron strength at 29, against a sanctioned 42. It's the lowest since the 1960s. Not ideal after the recent aerial battle with Pakistan. India's backup plan has been ready since the 1980s. Replace the MiG-21 with a homegrown Tejas fighter jet. But the project has faced multiple delays. Even today, only 2 Tejas squadrons are operational. And don't forget the quality gap. The upcoming Tejas model, the Mark II, is a 4.5 generation fighter jet. China already operates multiple squadrons of the 5th generation jets. Plus, they have a 6th gen in development. So, the MiG-21's retirement isn't just about saluting a workhorse. It is about learning from it. Planes, like all machines, cannot be stretched beyond a limit. Upgrading and innovating is the only way to keep up.
It's a busy week for Donald Trump. A lot of his allies are in the US for the United Nations General Assembly. Some of them are dropping in at the White House. Guess who dropped by yesterday? Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. And he came with his boss, Army Chief Asim Munir. Things did not start off quite well. The Pakistani team reached the White House around 5 p.m., but Trump was busy inside. He was signing executive orders and speaking to the press. So for 30 minutes, the Pakistanis simply waited.
In fact, we have a great leader coming. We have the Prime Minister of Pakistan coming and the Field Marshal, Pakistan. Field Marshal is a very great guy, and so is the Prime Minister, both. And they're coming, and they may be in this room right now. I don't know, because we're late. And I said maybe they'd like to join the. They actually may be somewhere in the beautiful Oval Office. Yep.
Eventually, the meeting did happen, but not in front of the cameras. It was a bit unusual for the Trump White House. We know the president loves the cameras. In fact, before Sharif, the Turkish president was in the same room, and that meeting was live streamed. But when Sharif came in, no live coverage. Pakistan later posted pictures and videos of the talks. Take a look. The power equations are quite clear here. Trump, Munir, and then Sharif. That's the order. But the mystery does not end here. The US has not even released a statement after the meeting. No Truth Social post by Donald Trump, not even a YouTube video of the meeting. So what's happening here? Well, the same thing happened in June as well. That's when Army Chief Asim Munir visited the White House. That meeting was also behind closed doors. Either the agenda was extremely sensitive, or the White House just did not care. Either way, it's a story. On the other side, it's the opposite. Islamabad was thrilled about the meeting. As expected, they boosted Trump's ego. Sharif called Donald Trump a man of peace. He also praised Trump's so-called bold and courageous moves to end wars. Again, not surprising, Pakistan has nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, so flattery was expected. Sharif thanked Donald Trump for mediating between India and Pakistan. He claims the US averted a major catastrophe in South Asia. And the only catastrophe here is Pakistan. And as for mediation, India has already rejected the claim. New Delhi repeated it today.
कश्मीर के मुद्दे पे हमारा रवैया, हमारा पक्ष बड़ा साफ है, उसमें कोई बदलाव नहीं आया है। जहाँ तक मध्यस्थता की बात है, वहाँ भी तीसरे किसी भी पक्ष की द्विपक्षीय मुद्दों पे भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच में द्विपक्षीय जो मुद्दे हैं, उसमें कोई जगह नहीं है तीसरे पक्षों का।
What else did Sharif and Trump discuss? Pakistan is seeking investments to bail out their economy, so Sharif invited US firms to Pakistan. He urged them to invest in agriculture, mines and energy. And that last one is important, energy. Pakistan does not have a sizable oil reserve, yet Donald Trump is apparently interested. He wants US firms to explore and extract Pakistani oil. The question is, how does all of this affect India? Well, the pivot is undeniable. In his last term, Trump had tried to isolate Pakistan. He cut off military aid to Islamabad. He even called them a safe haven for terrorists. But now, the same Trump is rolling out the red carpet. Statement or not, he is cozying up to Pakistan. We know what's in it for Islamabad, but what's in it for Donald Trump? Well, he is refocusing on South Asia. He is openly seeking the return of a military base in Afghanistan. It's called Bagram, just north of Kabul. Clearly, the US wants a presence in South Asia. The Taliban have said no to Bagram, but Pakistan will likely give Trump anything he wants. And don't forget the personal stakes. Trump's family has signed a crypto deal with Pakistan. They stand to gain from Islamabad's pivot towards cryptocurrency. If that was on the agenda, the radio silence makes sense. After meeting Trump, Sharif flew back to New York. He spoke at the UNGA today, the United Nations General Assembly, and as he started, things got a bit confusing because Sharif was not praising Pakistan or his government. He was endlessly praising Donald Trump.
Though in a position of strength, Pakistan agreed to a ceasefire facilitated by President Donald Trump's bold and visionary leadership. we express our deep appreciation to him and his team for their active role in bringing about the ceasefire. President Trump's efforts for peace helped avert a more threatening war in South Asia. Had he not intervened timely and decisively, the consequences of a full-fledged war would have been catastrophic. Who would have lived to tell what happened? And therefore, in recognition of President Trump's wonderful and outstanding contribution to promote peace in our part of the world, Pakistan nominated him for Nobel Peace Prize. And I think this is the least we could do for his love for peace. And I think truly he's a man of peace.
Then came the usual rhetoric. Sharif criticized so-called Indian tyranny in Kashmir. He also called for a UN-backed plebiscite in the region. Like I said, the usual propaganda from Pakistan. Sharif also made his customary offer of talks. He said he is ready for result-oriented discussions with India. But New Delhi's position is clear. First stop terror, then we can talk. I'm sure India was watching Sharif closely in the US. First the White House meeting, then the rambling UNGA speech. Tomorrow, it's India's turn to speak. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar will deliver India's address. So expect some fireworks this weekend. Also in the US is Mohammed Yunus. Though frankly not a surprise, if there's a foreign trip on offer, Yunus will take it. He will address the General Assembly later today. But he's already made headlines, all thanks to his anti-India rhetoric. Yunus's strategy appears to be pretty simple. Blame everything on India. Radicals overrunning your streets? Well, blame India. Regional cooperation fading? Again, blame India. Unable to fix your relations with New Delhi? Again, blame the Indian side. That sums up Mohammed Yunus's strategy. He says India did not like Sheikh Hasina's ouster last year. Therefore, New Delhi is spreading fake news in Dhaka.
We have problems with India right now because they didn't like what the students have done. They're hosting Hasina, who's the former prime minister, who created all this problem and killed the young people. And that creates a lot of tension between India and Bangladesh. Also, lots of fake news coming from the other side, making all kinds of propaganda that this is a very bad thing. This is an Islamist movement, and these are the Talibans who took over Bangladesh and so on.
Then he turned to SARC. SARC stands for South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It's a regional bloc for South Asia, sort of like a South Asian ASEAN. But for years now, SARC has been frozen because of Pakistan. Islamabad continues to sponsor terrorism against India, so India does not want to platform Pakistan. It's as simple as that. But Mohammed Yunus is conveniently hiding that reality. Instead, he is blaming India for stalling SARC.
All the countries that in the SARC countries, they can visit each other, make friends with each other, study in the universities, colleges, wherever they are. They go do business in each other's countries. That was the whole idea. Our history gives us the opportunity to make that happen. But somehow it didn't fit into the politics of one country, so we have to stop that.
Well, India has reacted to this claim. It has indirectly blamed Pakistan for sabotaging SARC.
We want to promote regional connectivity and collaboration. As far as SARC is concerned, we made our position very clear. There is one particular country which is responsible for holding progress in SARC. And you know that country, which country is that country.
But Yunus is very serious about this. He had a meeting with Pakistan's Prime Minister in New York. Once again, SARC came up and listened to Yunus's statement about it. I'm quoting. With SARC largely inactive in recent years, the two leaders also discussed alternative avenues to enhance regional cooperation. For starters, good luck. Any South Asian bloc without India is unlikely to take off. And that's not just bluster, that's simple geography. India is the geographic center of South Asia. So without India, a regional bloc does not make sense. Secondly, why is Yunus bothering with such long-term plans? He's an interim leader. He will be on his way out by February. That's when Bangladesh will hold its elections. So why not leave all this planning to the next leader, to an elected leader? Because it doesn't fit his agenda. Under Mohammad Yunus, Dhaka has moved away from Delhi. It has also provoked India with hostile moves, like signing strategic deals with China, holding military talks with Pakistan, buying weapons from Turkey, and restricting imports from India. After doing all this, who does Yunus blame? New Delhi. Let's also focus on his two main claims. One is that India is hosting Sheikh Hasina. Well, that is not a secret. Yes, Dhaka has requested his extradition, but India has real concerns, like will Sheikh Hasina get a fair trial or a show trial? Will things even reach the court, or will Islamist radicals take matters into their own hands? Yunus is not willing to address these concerns, yet he keeps obsessing over Hasina. Secondly, he talks about the so-called fake news. Apparently, there is no Islamist wave in Dhaka. It's all made up by the Indian media. Then why did Bangladeshi students march with ISIS flags? Why did mobs destroy temples only? Yunus won't answer that. And it's not just India. Here's a French outlet saying the same thing, that Islamists have resurfaced in Dhaka. So this is not some one-sided propaganda we are peddling. It is the global consensus on the new Bangladesh. Just look at what happened at Dhaka University. Campus elections were held recently. Guess who won? The Jamaat student wing, the same radical Jamaat that was banned under Sheikh Hasina, that supported Pakistan's genocide in 1971. They won this election. But sure, there is no Islamist wave in Dhaka. Yunus can say whatever he wants, but here's the truth. History will not be kind to him. He was brought in to stabilize and reform Bangladesh. Instead, he has unleashed radical forces. Did he do it on purpose? Well, we don't know. But that's his legacy. Compare him to the new interim leader of Nepal. You know what she said in her first speech? That she did not wish for this job, that she would transfer power in 6 months. Yunus took 1 year to even accept an election. He is holding polls, hopefully, 18 months after taking over. So Mohammad Yunus won't be remembered as some grand reformer. He will be remembered as the guy who overstayed. Now let's talk about the situation in Ladakh. This week, tensions exploded in the region. 2 days ago, protests turned violent in the town of Leh. 4 locals have died, 90 others were hurt. At the center of these protests is Sonam Wangchuk, a prominent climate activist and innovator. He is widely recognized for his contributions to education. He even inspired a character in the popular Hindi film 3 Idiots. But now, Wangchuk is under the scanner. He was arrested by the local police today. On what grounds? The police say his speeches provoked the unrest. Plus, the government has also revoked the donation license of Wangchuk's NGO. He cannot receive foreign donations anymore. Sonam Wangchuk has been a key voice for Ladakh. He has led hunger strikes. He has raised regional issues. But today he faces legal scrutiny. Our next report tells you why.
Over the past 2 days, events in India's Ladakh have dominated headlines. Violent clashes led to casualties. A curfew has been imposed. Internet services were suspended. And today, the face of the protests in the region was arrested. Sonam Wangchuk was detained in Leh today. Police said he was detained before a planned press conference. Local officials claim Wangchuk played a role in the unrest. They allege his statements encouraged crowds to act violently, leading to some protesters targeting government buildings. The government has also taken action against organizations linked to him. It canceled the FCRA license of his NGO. The Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or FCRA, is a law that governs how Indian organizations can receive money from abroad. If the license is revoked, that organization cannot legally accept foreign funds. The CBI has also opened an inquiry into his institute for alleged violations of this law. Wangchuk has denied the allegations. He says he is being made a scapegoat. So what triggered the unrest? To understand these protests, we need to revisit the events of 2019. That was when Article 370 was revoked. The state of Jammu and Kashmir was split into two union territories. Jammu and Kashmir kept a legislature. Ladakh did not. Since then, Ladakh has been governed directly by the central government. Many local groups say this has left them without political representation. They are demanding statehood. They are also asking for inclusion in the 6th schedule of the Constitution. The 6th schedule gives tribal majority regions more autonomy. It allows local councils to make laws about land, forests, jobs, and resources. Over 90% of Ladakh's population belongs to scheduled tribes. That is why local groups argue the 6th schedule should apply to them. For years, these demands have led to marches, sit-ins, and hunger strikes. This week, the protests turned violent, and Wangchuk, a prominent voice in the movement, has now been arrested. Ladakh's unrest goes beyond local politics. The region borders both China and Pakistan. It is one of India's most sensitive frontiers. Any instability here can potentially affect national security. In conflict, Ladak's people have stood as the first line of defense. In peace, they have supported intelligence gathering and border vigilance. That is why a resolution is necessary. The unrest shows the urgency for dialogue and a lasting solution. It must happen sooner rather than later.
What does it take to make decisions? Let me be more specific. What is it like to make decisions that affect millions of people, knowing that a mistake may wreak havoc, that a small success may spur massive change? Well, this is exactly what policymaking is all about. It is made up of quiet, seemingly boring moves that can bring great results. Case in point, India's school dropout rate. It has halved over the past 2 years, mostly thanks to a small policy shift that began 3 decades ago. And this is not the only example of its kind. So what is the key to bringing change and unlocking solutions to complex challenges? Here's a report.
The year was 1995. India launched the midday meal scheme. This was done to improve enrollment, retention, and nutrition among students from disadvantaged groups. It provided free supply of 100 grams of food grains per child per school day. In 2001, this changed. Children started receiving cooked midday meals instead. This was for primary school students. And in 2008, the scheme expanded to include students from classes 1st to 8th. It all may have started as a small policy move more than 30 years ago, with gradual changes along the way. But today, this scheme is the world's largest school feeding program. It reaches out to about 12 crore children in about 13 lakh government schools across India, and it has helped achieve an ambitious goal. The Indian education system has recorded one of its sharpest gains in recent years. Dropout rates have nearly halved in the past 2 years. This is according to a government survey. And if the current downward trend continues, India can achieve near universal school completion within a decade. This sharp improvement is thanks to a structural turnaround in retention, meaning more children are staying enrolled and completing their schooling. It has been made possible with policies like the midday meal scheme, but also targeted scholarships and incentives for disadvantaged groups, an improvement in infrastructure that has made learning more accessible. Experts say this showcases the impact of slow and steady policy moves that silently spur massive changes. But this is hardly the only example of its kind. Take India's forest cover, for instance. It has increased by 2.5% between 2011 and 2021. It is a modest change over the span of a decade, but a notable one. And this growth is thanks to the several conservation programs across the country that started quietly but mushroomed over the years, promoting the protection and plantation of trees. And this is what policymaking is all about. There are slow, incremental shifts. But there are also times when decision-making needs to be fast. We saw this during the pandemic, when the world witnessed a range of different responses, from closing borders to restricting movement of people and mandating masks. But whether it is fast or slow, one thing is common. Policymaking is a never-ending process. Every small decision can affect millions of people. And the key is to unlock seemingly simple, even boring answers to solve complex challenges. But it is not as easy as it sounds. Making policy is really difficult. It is rarely straightforward, and no policy is perfect. Whatever the decision, the effects are almost always uneven. Plus, policymaking is a multilateral effort. It includes civil servants, elected ministers, researchers, generalists, and specialists. All kinds of people influence policies. And at the very heart of it are the communities that are connected to the challenge. They are impacted by the problem, but also influence the solutions. There is no magic bullet for good policymaking, but for real impact, all you need is one policy shift that works.
Our last story tonight comes from New York City. This is the most populous city in the United States. It is also home to a lot of rats, about 3 million of them, 3 million rats. And they're not your average rats. They love to socialize, they have an active nightlife, and apparently they even have their own language. That's right, researchers have picked up on high-frequency rat chatter. Apparently, it is an entire social language that we humans cannot hear. But is this true? Our next report explores.
A years-long war, humans versus rats, and the battleground, none other than the Big Apple. New York City. This is the most populous city in the U.S., but its boroughs are also home to about 3 million rats. Lurking beneath the glitz and glamour, they are resilient. They are troublesome. And they have cemented their position as native New Yorkers, albeit without the tote bags or the steep rent. So in 2023, the city appointed a rat czar to up its fight. Kathleen Karate vowed to eliminate the city's rodent problem. Armed with a budget of $3.5 million, she launched an all-out campaign to end the rodent reign. She tried to raise public awareness about rat mitigation. Her efforts included so-called rat walks, where attendees strolled through neighborhoods and learn about ratty behavior, pardon the pun. Because nothing says fun day out like bonding over scurrying vermin. She also introduced birth control for rats to reduce their population. But alas, the czar has been dethroned. She has quit. She's off to less squeaky pastures. And the city's furry rodents have prevailed, yet again. But what is the secret to their success? Do they have tiny rat smartphones? Are they calling in reinforcements? Turns out they might have something even better. A secret language, you heard that, right? According to new research, New York City rats are great conversationalists. They love to socialize. They have an active nightlife. And they love to chat. They have their own social language. It is a high-frequency chatter. The rats communicate using ultrasonic squeaks inaudible to humans, kind of like an ambulance siren, but at a much higher pitch. After all, these tough rats have had to survive a tough city. So their language has been adapted to chat in noisy places like subway stations and traffic jam-packed streets. Scientists say their language helps them stay safe and stay connected, much like humans. Except their biggest priority is not a boring work meeting, but probably food. This study has not been peer-reviewed yet, but this is not the first time scientists have learnt about an animal language. Dolphins have their own social language too, which we humans don't understand. Of course, we don't understand the rat language either, but even if we did, the rats would probably be talking trash, quite literally.
Pakistan has reached the final of the Asia Cup, or should I say, tripped, fell, and somehow slid into the final. This weekend, they'll be facing India, and naturally, Pakistanis on X did what they do best. Not fix their batting order, not improve their fielding, but meme their way through the existential crisis that is Pakistani cricket. Because when your team collapses faster than your economy, at least your sense of humor is still in form. Take a look.
पता नहीं ऐसे डेंजरस सिचुएशन में मैं ऑटोमेटिकली आगे कैसे आ जाता.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. In northeast Russia, polar bears take over an abandoned research site. In Spain, thousands of fans attend the first San Diego Comic-Con outside America. And in Peru, Gen Z protesters flaunt the anime pirate flag. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1960, the first televised U.S. presidential debate was broadcast. John F. Kennedy squared off against Richard Nixon. Kennedy was widely acknowledged as the winner of that debate. Nixon appeared nervous and had refused to wear makeup. 3 weeks later, Kennedy won the presidency. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.